Hi, everybody. It's the language of music, lesson 2, which means we're going to be doing theory today. And I'm really glad to see you. It's Mother's Day. So I'm so far having a wonderful day and trying not to focus on the fact that I miss my kids and that I can't be with them. But there's been contact and flowers, and I'm having a great dinner tonight provided by my husband, and he gave me a plant, and it's been as good a Mother's Day as it can be given the circumstances that we're living through. So I'm in a good mood. So I thought, because I'm in a good mood, that it would be a great idea to talk about dotted rhythms. Now, I got to tell you, this isn't easy, and a lot of people struggle with it. And if it's hard for you, you're not alone. It's based on simple mathematics, and it shouldn't be hard. And yet, in the moment when you're faced with a piece of choral music and there's a string of notes in front of you and they have dots and they have rests and they have ties and they have all these things, you just go, this is so hard. And I completely get that. So that's why we're going to do another lesson on rhythm. We may do more than one because rhythm is really important. It's really, really impossible to perform music well if you're not focused on the rhythm. Okay, so you really need to spend some time on this stuff. Try to think of it as fun. Try to think of it as a great Mother's Day gift that I'm giving you. Okay, see if that works. We're going to talk about dotted rhythms. A dot to the right of a note makes the note longer. It lengthens the period of time that you spend on that note. The dot lengthens the note by half of itself. So I made you a chart. And if you downloaded it and printed it out, it should be in front of you. And up here, it gives you all of the note values, like whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note, and it shows you what they are usually equivalent to, and then it shows you what they're equivalent to if there's a dot next to them. In every case, the value is increased by half of itself. So if you assume that a whole note equals 4 beats, then a dotted whole note equals 6 beats, 4 plus 2. If you assume that a quarter note equals 1 beat, then a dotted quarter note equals 1.5 beats, 1 plus a half. You always take the number of beats that the note is worth, and then when you put a dot next to it, you add half of itself to that. Very important concept, very easily forgotten. So look at this chart and see if it makes sense. These are the note values, and these are the rest values. They're the same. A whole rest, if it's equal to 4 beats, is equal to 6 beats if it's a dotted whole rest. A quarter rest, if it's equal to 1 beat, is equal to 1.5 beats. A half rest, a half note, if it's equivalent to 2 beats, is equal to 3 beats if it's dotted. So you're always increasing the amount of beats by half of itself. Okay? So that's something that you really have to get into your head, and then you need to do practice to apply it to the music that you're going to be singing. So I gave you a class practice sheet. Homework. How exciting is that? Homework. Oh my God, I'm so thrilled. So on this piece of paper, I gave you a bunch of lines of music, and they include notes and rests. And what you need to do is to be able to look at a line of music and follow along and read both the notes and the rests. Okay? Now, the other concept that you have to have in order to be able to do this right is the meter signature. I talked about it in lesson 1. The meter signature is the 2 numbers that are written at the beginning of a line of music that tell you 2 absolutely crucial pieces of information. You cannot function unless you know the answer to 2 questions. First question, how many beats in a measure? Okay, now you can come to rehearsal and you can say, Beth, could you tell me how many beats there are in a measure? And I could tell you, but wouldn't it be nice to know for yourself? So you look at the piece of music and you look at the beginning, at the left of the line, at the left of the first line. and you will see a meter signature, two numbers, one on top of the other. And a meter signature looks, I want to do this without covering me up. Here are meter signatures. Two numbers, one on the top, one on the bottom. Those two numbers tell you, the top number tells you the answer to that first question. How many beats in a measure? What's the top number? 4? Then there are 4 beats in a measure. The bottom number on a meter signature is maybe harder to remember. It tells you what kind of note gets 1 beat. We need to know what we're counting. Are we counting quarter notes? Are we counting eighth notes? Are we counting half notes? What are we counting? If we're counting quarter notes, then the bottom number will be a 4, like that. That 4 is kind of like the bottom of a fraction that has a 4 on the bottom. It's got something to do with a quarter, right? If there's the bottom of a fraction, 1/4 is 1/4, 1/4. So we try to think of it the same way. It's the bottom number is a 4. It's got something to do with quarters. So the answer is there are 4 beats in a measure, and the quarter note gets 1 beat. The quarter note gets 1 beat. So how many quarter notes could there be in a measure? There could be 4. Now this is another one, which is, I think, 3/4, right? Yes, 3/4 is written right here. That's typical waltz time. 3 beats in a measure, and the quarter note gets 1 beat. 3 beats in a measure, and the quarter note gets 1 beat. 1, 2, 3. By the way, what's a measure? Just in case you've forgotten. A measure, which I've written right there in parentheses, is the distance in music between one vertical line and the next vertical line. That space is called a measure. It's simply an arbitrary way that we've learned how to write music so that it makes sense to us visually. So the measure, that distance between one vertical line and the next vertical line, will have exactly 4 beats in it, and the quarter note will get 1 beat, or it will have exactly 3 beats in it, and the quarter note will get 1 beat. What if the quarter note doesn't get 1 beat? What if over here, 3/2? What if the 2 is on the bottom? If the 2 is on the bottom, think of your fractions, the half note gets 1 beat. And if the 3 is above it, that means 3 beats in a measure, and the half note gets 1 beat. So how many half notes could there be in a measure? There could be 3. There could be as many as 3. Couldn't be any more, but there could be as many as 3 half notes in a measure. So 3 beats in a measure, and the half note gets 1 beat. What if there's an 8 on the bottom? What if there's an 8 on the bottom? Then the 8th note gets 1 beat. Think of 8th notes as being fast and being sort of parts of larger things, but in fact, an 8th note can get 1 beat. And if an 8th note gets 1 beat, and there's a 6 on the top, is there? Yes, there is. A 6 on the top and an 8 on the bottom, it means that the measure has 6 beats in it, and the 8th note gets 1 beat. So how many 8th notes could there be in a measure? There could be 6. 6 8th notes. 6, 8. These are all different time signatures. Now there's also, I wrote down here, a great big C. And that is just an abbreviation for 4/4 time, because 4/4 time is the most common time signature of them all. We often organize music in our minds in 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just feels like a good way to write music or to sing music, and it's so common that they call it common time, and they abbreviate it by putting a great big C at the front of the line. And then they also have, where is it? This cute little thing, which is a C with a straight line drawn through it, which we call cut time, which is 2/4. 2 beats in a measure, and the quarter note gets 1 beat. Marches are often written in 2/4. Da 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 da, 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. These are typical marches because that's how people march: left, right, left, right. Da 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 da. That's a march. So typically a march is in 2/4. Typically a waltz is in 3/4. Pa pa, 1 2 3. Da 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 da. I just made that one up and it wasn't very good, but it was in 3/4. So that's the way we organize music. We think about beats. We think absolutely about beats all the time. We try to make our beat as steady and recurring and constant as possible, remember? And then we organize our beats by groups of 2, groups of 3, groups of 4, groups of 5, 6, 7, 9, 12. There's a lot of different meter signatures, but there's just different ways of organizing songs. So to practice that, I gave you this class practice sheet, which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, forget 7, 8, 9, 10. It has 6 lines, all written with a different meter signature. And the meter signature is telling you, I wrote it in a kind of a simple way with the number on top and then an actual quarter note or whatever, or eighth note or half note, to remind you what that meant. So this is 4 beats in a measure and the quarter note gets 1 beat. And then you can go along here and you can clap or speak or tap this rhythm by making sure that there's the right number of beats in a measure, seeing how they fit together. Is it a rest? Is it a note? What is it? And how does it add up to 4? And you should be sure that you understand that before you ever start to clap or tap. Understand it first. If you understand it intellectually, it will come through in your voice. I'm sure it will. Now down here, I gave you a little fun exercise. This is your homework assignment that if I were a teacher, I would grade you on this. I'm not, and I won't. But these bottom lines say, fix any mistakes you find. This is something you do with a pencil. And you sit there and you look and you go, let's see, is every one of these measures correct? Do they all add up to 4? This is supposed to be 4 beats of the measure and the quarter note gets 1 beat. So the very first measure, I have a dotted, where am I? A dotted quarter note. That's 1.5 beats. Then I have an eighth note. Excuse me, that's a half a beat. So far we've got 1.5 and a half. And then I have another quarter note, which is 1. So 1.5 plus a half is 2, and 1 is 3. Is that a correct measure? No, it is not, because it's supposed to add up to 4. So in order to correct the measure, you would have to add either a quarter note, or a quarter rest, or 2 eighth notes, or 4 16th notes, or anything that adds up to 1 beat. Let's do the next one. The next measure has a half note, a quarter note, and a quarter rest. A half note, a quarter note, and a quarter rest. The half note equals 2, the quarter note equals 3, and the quarter rest equals 4. So that measure is correct as it stands, so you don't change it. Okay? These get a little bit more complicated as you go along. See if you can figure them out. It's like doing the crossword puzzle in the paper in the morning. It keeps your brain working, and it keeps you smart, and it keeps you from getting old. So that's a win-win-win. So you should be doing these and consider them a fun little thing to do on Mother's Day, something to, no, it won't be Mother's Day by the time you see this. So that's good. It's just Mother's Day now that I'm showing it to you. Now, I also gave you one more thing. I copied this music from Thomas Tallis, who is a Renaissance composer. No problems with copyright here. This is really old music. And it was a motet written for 5 parts, soprano, alto, tenor 1, tenor 2, and bass, something like that. And this is the way this music looks. It's just the first 3 measures of a long piece by Thomas Tallis. And you don't need to sing it or know anything about what it sounds like. You can look it up if you want to. Maybe you can find it on YouTube, this particular piece. In the meantime, what I want you to do is to look at, this is an example of how all of these concepts are put together into choral music. So you have a clef, G clef or bass clef. You have a key signature, which we haven't talked about yet, but most of you have seen key signatures before. And then you have a meter signature, which in this case is 4-2. 4 beats in a measure, and the half note gets 1 beat. Be sure you remember that the half note gets 1 beat. Then look at each line of music. Pretend that you're a soprano, then pretend that you're an alto, pretend that you're a tenor, and so on. Pretend that this particular line of music is what you have to sing. And figure out how many beats you're going to hold each note. I've checked it and it's correct. There's no mistakes in here, so you don't have to worry about, oh, there's something wrong with this one. I have to fix it. Nope, they're all right. But you need to go through them and check them and make sure you understand how it is that 4 beats in a measure and the half note gets 1 beat works. So for example, first measure top line is a dotted whole note followed by a half note. If you assume the half note gets 1 beat, which you must because there's a 2 on the bottom. If you assume that the half note gets 1 beat, then the whole note gets 2 beats. The dotted whole note gets 3 beats. And the half note gets 1, so you have 3 plus 1 equals 4. I'm going to say that again. We're assuming that the half note gets 1 beat because there's a 2 on the bottom. The half note gets 1 beat, then that means that a whole note, which is right here, a whole note gets twice as many as a half, so it gets 2. But this is a dotted whole note, so it gets, again, half of itself, 2 plus 1, or 3. The dotted whole note gets 3, and then the half note after it gets 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. That measure is 4 beats, 3 plus 1. Okay? When you're doing a Thomas Tallis motet, the chances are it's going to be quite slow, although it doesn't say that in the music. So you can count nice and slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. It also helps sometimes to take a pencil and write down the counting like I just did. Write it down under the notes. Use a pencil because you might have to change your mind. And add up the numbers and make sure that every measure comes to 4. Once you've done the top line, do the next line. And then the next, and the next, and the next. This gives you 5 chances of 3 measures each. So that's 5 times 3, 15 measures that you can make sure you understand 4 to the time. Okay? So it says at the bottom, look at each line and each measure and see if you can understand the meter signature, the notes, the dotted notes, and the rest. Please remember that what I'm asking you to do is to understand it. I'm not yet asking you to sing it. I'm not asking you to understand or to be able to do it right away. All of us have difficulty. Everybody, professional musicians, semi-professional musicians, dubbers, all of us have trouble with rhythm. And when we're presented with a piece of music for the first time and your choral director, can you imagine this, says, sight read, please. Oh, terrible thing to do. When your choral director says sight read, please, it means that you have to look at this music and just sing the notes for the right length of time, in addition to singing the right note. And it is my experience that most of you sing the right note far more often than you sing the right rhythms. So spending extra time on rhythm will really benefit you and eventually your chorus, because we will be better musicians and we will sing better and we will be more accurate. And that's our goal. So my Mother's Day message to you today is, do your homework. Add up some numbers. It'll be a nice interlude between the other things you're doing. If you have kids and you're doing homeschooling and they are, I would say, 3rd grade and up, they might enjoy doing this with you. They really might. There's not enough of this that goes on in school, and certainly not now. Nobody's fault, but that's just the way it is. You could include your child in your exercises, in your music exercises, and not only would you learn it, but they would too. It has also been my experience that the very best way to learn anything is to teach it to somebody else. Suddenly it makes sense because you have to articulate it in a way that the other person understands you. And you have to make it clear. And if you can make it clear to somebody else, you'll make it clear to yourself as well. So, include your life partner or whoever it is you're sharing this COVID period with. Say, hey, come on, I'm going to teach you how to read dotted rhythms. And that person may not be too enthusiastic, but it will really help you learning it if you can teach it to somebody else. I really recommend that. It's a great way of getting better at something. So anyway, have a great time. I'm thinking the weather this week is going to be warmer. We're going to spend more time outside. I certainly hope so. We're hoping to play golf this week. Oh, I hope that comes true. In the meantime, do some singing. Sing along with somebody. Sing a hymn. It's Sunday. Sing a folk song. Sing This Little Light of Mine, which you must have memorized by now. Sing something. and I'll see you in a couple of days. Bye, everybody.